Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. Tonight, our special guest is a returning visitor. Rob Kirby, founder of Kirby Analytics, is here to talk with us about some of the factors in the global economy and in Europe that foreshadow some of the principles that we are going to be subject to in North America. And we just are grateful to have you back on Reluctant Preppers, Rob.
Pleasure to be with you again, Dunnigan.
I was checking out some of the articles on your website, kirbyanalytics.com, and I noticed an intriguing section on the formation of the Eurozone. And I've heard a lot of people over the past years talk about social and cultural and financial trends that North America is on that are marching almost in lockstep behind some of the paths that Europe has taken over the past couple of decades, and that if you want to look at our future, you need to look no further than what's going on in the Eurozone. And I wonder if you could kind of give us an understanding of that for the common person, what principles are in effect and in play there that we need to be watchful and aware of.
Yeah, well, Dunnigan, I'll try to give you the elevator version of it. Increasingly, the Western world is run by a crowd of people that we refer to loosely as the globalists. And these globalist people have in their mind to remake the world with a one world government, with a one world currency. And if all goes well, I'm sure they would like to impose a one world religion, which is the worship of state itself. And the mode or the way that this is all to be achieved is by first organizing the world into regional blocks before the regional blocks are then stapled together, as you can maybe gather from the likes of the excuse the anachronisms that they give to these things, the NAFTA for the North American Free Trade Agreement, and lately they're trying to staple North and the North American continent to Europe through the creation of the TPP, which is called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And what these trading blocks that have been created, the euro is another one, and what these trading blocks do is they usurp the individual sovereignty of nations in the quest for this one world government. And specifically regarding the euro, the reason why these globalist entities are so hell-bent on having an insolvent country like Greece, who is critically insolvent, to remain in the euro, the reasoning goes something like this. If you cannot maintain a regional bloc like the Euro group, how could you ever expect to achieve one world government? And this in a nutshell is why these globalist-minded technocrats that run the European Union are so hell-bent on making a deal with Greece to give Greece the appearance that they still somehow belong in the European Union. And the reality, of course, is Greece belongs in the European Union no more than baking soda belongs with vinegar. The two do not go together. It's just a completely and utterly untenable situation to have Greece having the same currency unit as the industrial powerhouses, Germany and France, and this also is why England has never joined. It's an unworkable situation. I hope that's maybe shed a bit of light, at least through my eyes, on this.
Well, that's a start, and I guess I'd like to follow up with a few more questions. So for those who aren't that aware, or they have the history of this, what exactly is the Eurozone? How in the world do you go from having sovereign currencies in these different nations to suddenly switching to an international currency? I mean, how does that transition come about, and what has been happening? If you could first kind of give us an understanding of the Eurozone and the euro itself, and then secondly, what about the health of the Eurozone and the health of the euro?
Well, I'm going to suggest to the listeners that this concept this concept of the Eurozone is not a Johnny-come-lately concept at all. This is a concept that was first tabled, I believe, at a Bilderberg meeting, quite possibly the very first Bilderberg meeting back in the early 1950s. And, you know, when I throw out the name the Bilderbergers, this is another one of these supranational groups of people that I'm going to loosely refer to as the globalists. And it's this globalist-minded personality that really belied the creation of the United Nations, because the United Nations was conceptually created by the Rockefeller family back in this is back pre-Second World War. This has been a long-term vision of the elites to basically run the world. And, you know, throughout history, Dunnigan, there have been a lot of people of tremendous means and of tremendous power who have tried to rule the world. And as you might guess, if you've read any history at all, or if you've been schooled at all, you know that plans to take over the world or to rule the world usually don't end up very well at all. And
for anyone.
Exactly. Particularly those who they wish to rule. And so this is a common and recurring theme. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a recurring theme that is very pervasive in the history of humanity. And it's something that pokes its head up every number of years with a new form or a new brew of megalomaniac power types who want to basically reshape or remake the world in a new image. And this is what today's current version of the globalists or these megalomaniacs currently have in their sights. And the people that are behind the current movement are if not Rockefellers themselves, it's Rockefeller money, and their acolytes are people such as the Henry Kissingers of the world, the Zbigniew Brzezinskis of the world, the Maurice Strongs of the world, and their hand-selected acolytes, predominantly, I would suggest, from the banking community, both on this side and the other side of the pond. And together, these people have a view of remaking the world in a new image. And what people might want to do their own work and their own research on, rather than believing me speaking about this, is Google. Do your own research. There's plenty of material if you use the keywords. There's plenty of material written on the internet that you can suss out for yourself. And you got to remember, or you should remember, or believe by doing your own homework, that these globalist entities have written white papers on this very subject of basically remaking the world in a different image under this globalist concept called the New World Order. And they've written papers dating back 40 and 50 years on exactly how they would go about achieving this aim. And, you know, the descriptives that were written 40 and 50 years ago are very, very accurate descriptions of the world we live in right now. And it's not a very happy or pleasant descriptive. But I think everybody owes it to themselves to do their own work and to convince themselves that, you know, what I say is either hokey or it's sort of right on the screws.
Well, certainly we've been told over and over again that, you know, NAFTA or any of these trading bloc agreements that they're all about both peace and prosperity. Peace from the standpoint that the more countries you can get cooperating closely with each other and being interdependent, the less likely they are to make war on each other. And prosperity from the sense that by lowering barriers to trade and mutual tariffs and taxation and incompatible currency confusion, that sort of thing, is just going to streamline. It's going to raise everybody's standard of living across the board. It kind of reminds me.
Dunnigan, I want to interject here because what you were saying is exactly true and exactly correct. It's amazing how these globalists use nice words to reflect some pretty nasty stuff they're doing. And there's also a very long established history of them doing just this, because it was the globalist entities that were behind the formation and creation of the Central Bank of the United States, known as the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not federal. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. It's a private company. The Patriot Act is a nice name. Who doesn't like to be patriotic?
Right.
Except the key tenets of the Patriot Act serve to strip people of their civil liberties in the United States of America, and so the Patriot Act really isn't patriotic at all. Department of Homeland Security, we're led to believe that that's all about protecting the homeland. Well, through the lens of my eyes, it sure seems to me that getting groped in airports, groped at train stations, groped in shopping malls and sporting events isn't really about protecting the homeland whatsoever. And it seems to me that it's got a lot more to do with something that I'm going to refer to as slave training. So, the names that are given to these dastardly edifice that these globalists create are extremely misleading. They have a history of doing just that, and expect to see more of the same as they come for you to take you to a FEMA camp, which of course they'll never admit is indeed called a FEMA camp. They'll have a different name for it. They'll call it a playground for adults, and they'll try to sell it as something that's great and everybody should visit.
The relationship between European nations, which were historically completely independent countries with their own kingdoms, their own currencies, their own internal affairs and everything, now when you visit Europe, it does very much seem like it reminds you of being in the United States and traveling from state to state as far as openness of the borders and the single currency and that sort of thing. And even in the United States, there's in the last several decades, and it probably goes way back longer than that, there's been this, it seems like, one-sided shift of power, control, policy, and everything from semi-autonomous states to, which just had this kind of this cooperative arrangement back in the original formation of the United States, saying we're going to have some commerce clause and that sort of thing and common defense, to where now it seems like the role of states' rights is just fading into insignificance compared to federal control and centralized control. And it sounds like that's history. That's the lesson of history playing itself out again there on an international scale as well.
Well, you know what, Dunnigan, you bring up another really, really good point when you talk about when you travel to Europe, how freely people can move about from one country to the next. And my contention to you regarding that comment or observation of yours, if terrorism was really the global threat that it's purported to be by our elites who rule us, do you think they would really be pursuing something where people have that kind of freedom to move about between borders over such a wide range of nationalities and cultures in Europe, if this purported threat of terrorism was all that it's built up to be? I have to believe that if there was really truth to the notion that this terrorism thing is so horrible for humanity, they would be going in the other direction. They would be increasing the border securities in the European Union, and they'd be making travel a little more difficult as opposed to a little more easy. But you see, this is what exposes this whole hokum about a war on terrorism as the fraud that it really is, because it's really nothing about protecting us from extremists of any kind, because the people that are largely involved in fomenting or planning or creating the extremism on the terrorist front that we see, I'm convinced myself that an awful lot of it is false flag and provocateur, and it's used by our leaderships who are corrupt beyond belief as the means and the reason and the rationale to strip mine more of our civil liberties, to help them along the way in their push for this one world edifice that they want to achieve.